The views and opinions expressed on America's Workforce Union podcast and its digital media channels are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the producers or sponsors.
Welcome to the America's Workforce Radio Podcast, the flagship production of the American Workers Radio and Podcast Network, where organized labor and its never-ending fight to protect the rights of the American worker come first. Now, presented by LIUNA, Laborers International Union of North America. Here's your host, Ed Flash Ferenc.
Making America skilled again, what National Apprenticeship Week is all about. Meanwhile, new technologies, well, they're leading to layoffs at several large corporations. We'll run them down. And today on the show on Trades Day, we focus on IBEW Local 601 in Champaign, Illinois. Welcome to the Thursday, April 30th edition of America's Workforce, where we're available on at least 5 platforms, including YouTube, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. Brian Andersen will be our featured guest on the show today, Trades Day, here on America's Workforce, where we feature a specific trade every Tuesday and Thursday. And today, it's IBEW Local 601 in Champaign, Illinois. The website you want to go to is ibew601.org. They have about 600 members, and Brian's got a real interesting story to share with us. It involves a $200 million project, student housing outside University of Illinois, Champaign. It's a private housing project. And the general contractor on the job, PC Treehouse. But that company is managed by Power Construction, which is a large Chicago general contractor, very familiar with the trades, and they often do project labor agreements, but not in this case. But there is more to the story, and Brian's going to talk about how Bonus Electric, we're talking a $20 to $30 million electrical contract, well over 10% of that $200 million project. Bonus Electric bid on the contract, but they lost it to the owner's son, who has a non-union electrical company. Well, you can't make this stuff up. It's amazing what's going on in Champaign, Illinois, and Brian is going to be our featured guest here to talk all about that and the union difference. I mean, the workers are getting screwed on this one because they should be making well over $50 an hour, but they'll be lucky to be making $40 an hour. So Brian Andersen, IBEW Local 601 out of Illinois, will be our featured guest on Trades Day. And now, a brief look into the world of labor. The segment brought to you by Boyd Watterson Asset Management. We're talking $38 billion of assets under advisement. You can find more at boydwatterson.com. This week is National Apprenticeship Week. And in my opinion, every week should be National Apprenticeship Week, especially with all the construction that's going on from coast to coast. Well, this week, it's designated by the Labor Department every year. This week features 2,700 planned apprenticeship events and proclamations nationwide under the theme, America at Work, making America skilled again through registered apprenticeship programs. Started on Monday, wraps up this Friday, and the theme reflects the prominence of the programs, registered apprenticeship programs, as a key strategy to ensure the American worker is equipped for the skilled jobs of today and tomorrow. Keith Sunderling is the acting Secretary of Labor. Keith says National Apprenticeship Week offers us all a chance to celebrate the vital role that registered apprenticeship plays in lifting up American workers by offering them marketable skills. The events taking place across the country seek to advance the department's ongoing efforts to implement the administration's numerous executive orders addressing how to prepare Americans for jobs in skilled trades, including the shipping and maritime workforce, while also embracing future technologies that will innovate the workplace, and that includes artificial intelligence. We spoke a lot about that with Sean McGarvey last Tuesday here on America's Workforce. They have a partnership with OpenAI, And a lot of that has to do with the construction of so many data centers. Meta plans to cut 10% of their global staff starting in May, which starts tomorrow. In addition to laying off about 8,000 employees, the company plans further reductions in the second half of the year. Meta, of course, is the parent company of Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp, has already eliminated more than 1,000 jobs this year from its hardware division, Reality Labs, as it pivots away from virtual reality headsets and metaverse products toward AI wearable technology. Mark Zuckerberg is their CEO, and he has committed approximately $600 billion toward U.S. AI infrastructure before 2028. Wow, a lot of that's happening in Central Ohio. Dorsey Hager of the building trades will talk more about that tomorrow. Meanwhile, Nike has announced that it plans to cut approximately 1,400 positions as part of the final stretch of our Win Now action plan. That's interesting. In doing so, Nike believes that the move will help engender a leaner, faster, more connected technology organization by prioritizing technology roles at the company's headquarters and India Technology Center. Let me repeat that. India Technology Center. While 1,400 employees represent less than 2% of the company's workforce, this news follows in the wake of the firm's decision to lay off about 775 distribution center employees in January and less than 1% of its corporate staff last summer. You know, our Workers' Memorial Day series continues today. In fact, we'll wrap it up tomorrow. But today's story isn't about a single explosion or a single day. It's about decades of suffering, denial, and one of the most powerful rank-and-file labor movements in American history. It's the story of black lung disease and what happened when miners decided they had enough. Our friends at the National Labor Office of Blue Cross and Blue Shield presents this final segment. You know, Blue Cross and Blue Shield companies formed out of a need to provide affordable health care to teachers, loggers, and miners. Back in '65, the Blues developed the National Labor Office to strengthen its commitment to organized labor. Blue Cross Blue Shield's National Labor Office remains focused on America's workers, advocating for affordable and equitable health care, partnering with strategic alliances to provide industry-leading products and services, and proudly serving more than 18 million unionized workers, retirees, and their families, all working hard for America's working families for the health of America. You can learn more by following them at Blue Labor on LinkedIn and X, formerly known as Twitter. You know, for generations, coal miners from Appalachia came home from the Pittsburgh coal seam and the mines of West Virginia coughing, a deep, thick, suffocating cough that never went away. Coal workers' pneumocanosis, better known as black lung disease. Well, by the 1960s, it was killing thousands of miners every year. And for most of that time, the coal industry denied it even existed. Okay, so in February of 1969, miners had enough. Starting with 282 workers at the East Gulf Mine in West Virginia, wildcat strikes spread across the coal fields. Within weeks, roughly 40,000 miners walked off the job, unauthorized, unendorsed by their own union, and absolutely determined. They marched on the state capitol. They demanded that black lung be recognized as a disease, and they won. Congress passed the Federal Coal Mine Health and Safety Act later that year, establishing dust standards and compensation for affected miners. The Black Lung Benefits Act followed in 1972, extending protections further. These victories were not handed down from above. They were seized by sick men who refused to be dismissed. That's the thread that runs throughout every story that we have told this week. From Pemberton Mill in 1860 to the sugar refinery in 2008, every protection workers have today, every one, exists because someone fought for it, and often someone died for it. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the business manager of IBEW Local 601. Once again, you're listening to America's Workforce.
You're listening to America's Workforce with Ed Flash Ferenc.
It takes LIUNA to keep America running. Over 70,000 public employees are part of LIUNA, the Laborers International Union of North America, delivering critical services such as healthcare and emergency response, as well as maintaining roads and sanitation systems. Even the National Postal Mail Handlers Union, representing over 47,000 U.S. postal workers, is affiliated with LIUNA. Find out what it takes for LIUNA to keep America running at liuna.org. That's LIUNA.org.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Communication Workers of America. You can find more at cwa-union.org. This segment of the show is brought to you by the Brotherhood of Maintenance of Way Employees Division of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. For more information, please visit bmwe.org. The Iron Workers Great Lakes District Council, consisting of 8 iron worker local unions in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan. We build the skylines and bridges along the Great Lakes. With more work than ever before, the Great Lakes District Council is actively searching out the next great iron worker, whether it's building the next Intel plant or constructing a bridge to safely connect our great cities along the lake. So join the Iron Workers Great Lakes District Council today. Find out how and learn more about the council by visiting iwdistrictcouncil.com. America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the Heat and Frost Insulators Labor Management Cooperative Trust. Find out more at insulators.org/LMCT.
America's Workforce is sponsored in part by Boyd Watterson Asset Management, LLC. Find out more about our investment solutions tailored to meet the needs of Taft-Hartley funds at boydwatterson.com.
There is unity and strength for workers.
We are the USW.
We are the USW.
The United Steelworkers.
The largest industrial union in North America.
We represent 850,000 members in the U.S., Canada, and the Caribbean.
We work in metals,
rubber,
chemicals,
paper,
oil refining,
atomic energy, and the service sector.
We are steelworkers, standing strong and fighting for what's right.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers. You can find more at ifpte.org.
American workers are sick of struggling to get by. It's time to get ahead. In the Teamsters Union, workers are winning industry-leading contracts, historically high wages, fully paid health care, and retirement benefits you can count on. Across the country, Teamsters fight alongside our brothers and sisters to secure a better life. It's what we've been doing and how we've been living for more than a century. When we fight, we win. Join us. Be a Teamster.
America's Workforce is brought to you in part by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, where you can find more at teamster.org.
Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferenc.
And remember, you can check us out on Facebook or follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter. That would be AWF Union Podcast, AWF Union Podcast. Let's go to Champaign, Illinois. Featured guest today is Brian Andersen. Brian is business manager of IBEW Local 601. They got about 600 members right now. The website you want to go to is IBEW601.org, IBEW601.org. And we've got some issues with a non-union out-of-state contractor. Boy, anybody in the trades knows how difficult that is and how prevalent that's been for so many years. And Brian is trying to switch that around. Brian, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today. Little background on yourself. I guess you've been in the local for almost 2 decades. What made you go into the IBEW? If you don't mind, let's start right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Well, actually, if you go back in time, I was just a 19-year-old kid, had no idea what I wanted to do, just knew I didn't really, being an office job wasn't really the job for me, and was going to community college and just stumbled upon a professor who was teaching residential wiring. He happened to be a former IBEW member who had gotten hurt and was teaching classes, and he really pointed me in this direction. And 3 years of going through interviews and everything, I finally got into the apprenticeship program and haven't looked back. It was the best decision of my life.
Excellent. I heard that story from so many in the trades. It's a pathway to the middle class for so many members. And the IBEW, with all the data centers going up across America, there's a lot of work out there. I know there's some pushback in some communities, but hey, that happens when progress is involved, no doubt. Brian, talk to me about the work over there. And obviously, we're going to get into an issue here that needs to be addressed. Like I mentioned, we have an out-of-state contract. We try to keep things local, and we try to keep them union. It doesn't always work that way. So why don't you explain what's going on there?
Yeah, so on our campus here at the university, there's a ton of construction of apartment buildings. We can't ever seem to make enough. It's been like that since I was a kid. We just never can make enough of them. So we've got a project here. It's about $200 million right in the heart of Green Street, 15-story multi-unit apartment building. You have some commercial on the ground floor as well. We've got PC Tree House is the general on that project. That company is actually managed by Power Construction, which is a very prevalent general contractor in the Chicagoland area. And then they've got Bonus Electrical Construction Company doing the electric work on that project. That's another interesting tie there as well, is that Bonus Electrical Construction Company is actually the son of a IBEW contractor, Bonus Electric, out of the Chicagoland area as well. So very curious goings on this project.
So, Brian, how's the community responding to all this right now? And I'm sure you're being very vocal. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, we've engaged in a publicity campaign on that project to let everybody know what's going on. Like I said, this project is interesting because we've got some of the construction is union, but we're not. And so we're trying to strike a balance of letting the community know, but then not also harm our other brothers and sisters that are working on that project as well.
So you kind of walking a fine line right now on this because of what you just said?
Yeah, like you said, you try to first do no harm with everything you do, right? But trying to bring this to the communities, to the eyes that we've got somebody this Bonus Electrical Construction Company is based out of Nashville, Tennessee. All their workers are coming in from out of state. You're looking somewhere north of $20 million worth of work being performed there. And none of those wages are being paid to anybody that's in our community, and all that money is just leaving the state. It not only is this a non-union, but it's an out-of-state non-union to nobody that lives here in this community. And we've got somewhere close to 100 members that are off work right now that could be working on that project. So,
Brian, why don't you explain the difference of the wages here? I think it's important. I often on this show talk about the union difference in generally, and this is averaged out, of course. When you're in a union, your wages are at least 20% higher doing the same kind of work in a non-union environment. And then you could throw in the benefits. The benefits are a whole lot better. We all know about that, healthcare, pensions, and all that kind of stuff. But what do we know about the difference right now? And it's important that we point this out. It's all about education. You know that. All about education here. And if you're going to have higher wages in the community with union brothers and sisters, the community benefits on all of that. So what's the difference? What are you hearing on this? And I know a lot of these out-of-state ones, they try to lowball, and a lot of times the work isn't done properly. And I like to get into that part on this podcast. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So when we talked to one of the main guys in the project when it first started making contact, our organizer got out there, and he was making somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 an hour on the check. And our base wage right now is $51.07. There's a big delta right off the bat there just on wages, but the other big difference comes in the benefits. So typically in the non-union world, your benefits like your health care, your retirement usually comes off that $40 an hour on the check, whereas all of our benefits are paid above and beyond the wage. That wage you see is, the $51.07, that's what you get. Your pension benefits, your health and welfare come on top of that for the hours that you work. That's the union difference on these projects, is that the benefit side of it is where the delta really, really shows.
Now, what about the bidding process and all of this? Do they, to your knowledge, try to low bid here so they can get this work, or what?
Well, it's an interesting question, because I think that's probably where some of it had issues. So we had some local contractors that had some interest on the project. We did have one contractor that did turn in some numbers. Also, this Bonus Electric, the union company out of Chicago, has a very familiar relationship, and our contractors knew that they were involved in bidding that project as well. And so I don't know. I think it might have scared off some of our contractors for bidding. I think they kind of assumed that maybe the guy that had been doing a bunch of these jobs was going to get it as well. But nobody knew about his son also having a construction and contracting business as well that started back in August of last year. Well, did something go wrong here? I don't know. I don't have knowledge of that, but you tell me if the father and the son, you think they talked about the project? I don't know. I'll leave that for everybody else to decide.
It's got to make for an interesting Thanksgiving dinner if that son comes to dinner and the father's, gung ho union and the son has got a non-union company. You got to wonder about that. What happened? They had to raise a few eyebrows among your members, don't you think?
Yeah, well, it's a lot from our members, and then many of the members in Chicago where this company operates mostly. It's very curious. So it's definitely got a lot of our attention down here and up in there. A lot of the Chicago contractors or Chicago unions have got a lot of interest on this too.
Now, getting back to the project, I'm reading $200 million project. I mean, and this is just a chunk of it, but what are we looking at when this is all done here? That sounds like a pretty big deal.
Yeah. And like I said, our portion for the electrical is somewhere in the neighborhood between $20 and $30 million. That just depending on bids that get turned in. So that's a significant portion. You're talking thousands and thousands of man hours. Project of this size, you could see somewhere between 25 and 50 maybe of men working on that project just for the electrical side of things at peak, and you're looking at well over a year to a year and a half project, depending on timelines and if they can get it. They always want them done sooner rather than later, but that's a significant portion, especially at a local of 600 people. And you could have 40 or 50 of them at one spot. That's a good sized job for us.
And did I hear you say about 100 members of 601? They're sitting around right now. They should be working, but they're not because of this?
Well, it's not just because of this. We've had a lot of large scale work that's kind of wrapped up. Construction cycle typically towards the end of the year in the early spring, especially with the winter we had here, our projects are kind of slow to come out of the ground. But across 2 or 3 classifications, we've got somewhere between 80 to 100 guys off there. And I guarantee this is most of those. If this project was going, there would be somewhere between 5 and 10 of them on that job right now, because that job's just coming out of the ground now. They're just starting to go vertical.
So, Brian, what's the next step here? Obviously, you're getting some PR here on America's Workforce. I don't know what you've done in the local community. I hear maybe a call for Scabby the Rat. I don't know if we've gone down that road yet. What's your next step?
Well, Scabby's made a couple of appearances out there. I think that's definitely, the cards are still on the table for another appearance to Scabby. We're just trying to get all the stakeholders in the community to know about this, not only here, but in the Chicagoland area as well, to see what's kind of going on here, this project. Power Construction in Chicago, who manages this PC Treehouse, this other LLC that's got the permits pulled down here in Champaign, they routinely sign project labor agreements in the Chicago area on projects just like this. They've just ignored everybody here for the same call. We've asked to try to get a project labor agreement put in place to make sure this project gets built on time and within budget. But they don't want to do that. And I think they're going to save some money on the backs of some workers is what their intention is doing on this project.
So you're saying this Power Construction, they have a history of shying away? I mean, do they have any project labor agreements at all in the works, or they shun them altogether?
Down here in Champaign, they've shown no interest for it. But in Chicago, they routinely sign the project labor agreements. But we see this from time to time. Chicago area's unions are very strong, very vocal. They have a lot of numbers, which means that if they need to, show out on a job, it's very easy when you're pulling from a pool of 12,000 members. Just the IBEW in Chicago has got that many members. It's very easy to make a really big showing on a job. So I think these companies a lot of times are union where they have to be. Right. Yeah. And so they want to go to these other towns and say, well, let me see if I can get away with it here. And so what we're really trying to show is that this isn't going to fly down here in Champaign. Champaign is a union town. Like I said, with the university itself, we have over 100 of our members are employed full time over there. Just in the IBEW, the UA has got a bunch of people, everybody. It's a huge driver of the economy down here in Champaign. We're just trying to show that this isn't going to fly down here. You're not just going to come down here and bring in people from out of state to do your project, and it's just going to go unnoticed.
And Brian, primarily, that's why we've seen so darn many companies that want to locate in the United States go to the right-to-work states because they know that they don't have to deal with unions primarily in those states. Sometimes they do, but they know they're going to get away with a whole lot more if they go to those southern states. And obviously, you're getting a little glimpse of that over there in the Champaign, Illinois area. Brian, thank you so much for joining us here. You got a friend here on America's Workforce, and let us know what the next step is. Obviously, Scabby has made a few more appearances there. You got to educate the community. You got to make sure your members get the jobs that they were trained for. I mean, they go through those apprenticeship programs for very good reasons because you got a skilled workforce, and that's exactly what you want. IBEW601.org is a website you want to go to. Our featured guest is Brian Andersen, who is a business manager. You hang in there and stay in touch, okay, brother?
All right. Really appreciate you having me on today. Thank you so much.
And that'll be it for another edition of America's Workforce. Coming up tomorrow, it's the Columbus Central Ohio Building Trades, and it's our first Friday with Fred Redmond, Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO. Until then, all of you have a safe and wonderful day.
That concludes another episode of the America's Workforce Radio Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. America's Workforce is a production of Labor Tools and BMA Media Group. Find out more information online at labortools.com.